No, wasn't it like so bad? Unintentional?
Thank you everyone for coming on an early Saturday morning. We're so glad to have you. This has been in the works for a while. So yeah, and I hope everyone enjoyed breakfast and everything. But we'll start with some opening remarks and then get into today's programming. So good morning. My name is Sophia Shepard, and along with my co-director, Richard Gomez, we run TigerLaunch, which is the world's largest student-run entrepreneurship competition. Every year, we see the brightest student founders in their ventures come through our program. This year, we expanded to 2 new regionals in Houston and Berkeley, partnered for the first time with a school in the Global South, that is IIT Bombay in India, hosted 5 regional competitions in person all over the world, increased the prize pool by $15,000, and are so excited to have everyone here today at finals.
So 9 years ago, TigerLaunch started out as just a small competition for student founders at Princeton. And in the following years, we've grown to include dozens of student partners, hundreds of competing companies. And as TigerLaunch, we are primarily self-funded. So we have a wide array of donors and alumni and lots of people that help us out. And we couldn't be thankful enough for these partners, including Howard Cox, who the prize is named after. His generous donation has allowed us to give student founders up to $60,000. So we really appreciate his donation. Lauren Overdeck, Sumir Chadra, Elizabeth Myers, Alfred Hurley Jr., Robert Craybill, Frost Brown Todd, Contrary Capital, Highwell, Mixmax, Big Frog, the Princeton Keller Center, the CVE, and the Computer Science departments. All of these partners have partnered with us throughout the year and have made this event possible and have funded each and every one of these student founders. So we can't thank each of these partners enough for the work and the help that they have provided us this year.
And today we'll be seeing 12 student founder teams from across the world pitch their ventures. They'll be judged by our panel of top VCs who are here today in the front row. TigerLaunch wouldn't be possible without VCs donating their valuable time year after year. And so today we have, 2 of them aren't here yet, but we will see Stephen Chambers, Managing Director at IndieBio, Alexandra Sukin, Investor at Bessemer Venture Partners, Mark Bailey, Co-founder and CEO at B5 Capital. Thank you, Mark. Alex Bailey, co-founder and partner at B5 Capital. And then Trevor Barron, managing partner at Cloudtree Ventures. We're so glad to have you. And then these VCs will judge today's pitches based on the same criteria they use to consider their actual portfolio companies. And according to their judgments, the winning team will receive $30,000, the runner-up will receive $20K, and third place will receive $10K.
And once again, thank you to all our judges, but this couldn't have been done without the work of our TigerLaunch team. So we want to take the time to thank our individual team members as well. We've been hard at work since last summer. We've been planning this out since last summer, throughout last semester and this semester. It has all culminated in this global finals where we've brought the most amazing student founders here to Princeton. And for a large majority of this club, it is their first year at Princeton and with TigerLaunch, and we really appreciate just how they've hit the ground running and have worked hard to make this event possible. And finally, we'd also like to thank our amazing executive board, including Tim, who's back there doing the tech, William, our treasurer, Ilya, our logistics director, Christine, our branding director, Brian, our partnerships director, who has sourced so much of our money. And, Sophia and I are eternally grateful for these amazing individuals who have made this competition possible. So we really appreciate everyone's individual work and efforts throughout the year.
But before we start pitches, given how this is a student competition focused on empowering young people within entrepreneurship, we wanted to put a focus on providing perspectives from people who have been through the startup and fundraising process and succeeded. And so we've put together a panel titled Empowering Entrepreneurial Minds, Strategies for Teaching, Funding, and Impact. And later we have Eva Lau, the founder and general partner of 2 small ventures and a founding team member of Wattpad, speak as our keynote speaker later in the competition. But without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Ethan, who will be moderating the panel. And so these are our lovely panelists, and Ethan will introduce them. But we're so excited to get started. So if the panelists wouldn't mind coming up, yay!
Right. First and foremost, I would like to thank all our panelists for being here today. It means a lot for you guys to come out and help support student entrepreneurs on Princeton and around the world. So let's get started with some introductions. To the right of me is Corey Levy, who is the founder of Z Fellows, a pre-seed activator helping put first-time technical founders into business. Some mentors of the program include founders of Netflix, Figma, DoorDash, and is backed by notable institutions like Sequoia, Founders Fund, Sam Altman, and General Catalyst. Prior to Z Fellows, Corey was the co-founder of After School, a teen social network with 20 million users, and he also studied computer science at the University of Illinois, where he received 4 engineering scholarships before dropping out. In high school, he worked as an extern at Founders Fund, Union Squares, DFJ Mercury, and Techstars. Can we give a hand to Corey, guys? Next, we have Anne-Marie Maman, who serves as the executive director of the Princeton Entrepreneurship Council and has played a pivotal role in transforming Princeton's entrepreneurial ecosystem. She has developed programs for faculty, graduate students, and alumni entrepreneurs, focusing on education for entrepreneurs at all levels. Anne-Marie began her career in healthcare, working with Johnson & Johnson, US Surgical, and Genzyme on early customer discovery and product market fit for advanced technologies. Her drive to innovate in medical technology led her to co-found Oxia Medical, specializing in automated suturing. Subsequently, she founded 3 medtech companies, LumenView, Fox Diagnostics, and Oxygens, focusing on innovative healthcare tech solutions, with LumenView later being acquired by Fujifilm. Can we give a hand to Anne-Marie? And last but not least, we have Lauren Bender, who is the program director of Princeton University's Start Entrepreneurs. She joined Princeton in 2017 to manage the Alumni Entrepreneurs Fund, which is now fully invested in startups founded by early career Princeton founders. Prior to joining Princeton, Lauren was an active angel investor and a consultant to social impact and other startups. She co-founded a venture-backed startup with technology that was spun out of Xerox PARC, co-founded and co-managed a real estate investment fund, and has extensive experience creating and managing digital content programs for financial services companies. Lastly, can we give a hand to Lauren? So, something all of you guys have in common is supporting first-time or younger entrepreneurs. And so my first question for you guys is, given your experience with these first-time entrepreneurs, what do you see as some of the common challenges or mistakes that many of these founders make? And so this can include things like fundraising, product design, marketing, or any other facets of entrepreneurship.
I'll go ahead and start. Hi, it's great to be here and just really excited at all the work everyone here has done to be in this room. So thank you to all of you and to the team putting this together. First-time founders, I would say the biggest mistake, and I'll put that kind of in quotation marks, is impatience and not, like I have this idea, everyone's going to sign up because it's such a need. And I think underestimating the amount of work it takes to get from the idea to getting people to use your idea. It's a much longer process. In some ways, though, I think you need to be naive, or maybe you wouldn't undertake it. But I do sit in meetings, and I sometimes feel like I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but it's like, this is great, but you're going to need to work really hard to get to this next phase. And, how are you going to get, in fact, I'd love to hear from Corey how you got so many users, because we all read about these really successful startups. Oh, we started it in our, bedroom and we had 1 million followers in 2 weeks. Those are true stories, but that's not the typical story. And so I think it's just understanding what work you need to do. And then the second thing is related, really understanding your customer. Whose problem are you solving, and why are they going to use your solution, not someone else's solution, but your solution? I hope I left you guys plenty more things to say.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thanks all for being here. To kind of add on to what Lauren mentioned, yes, we got 20 million users, but before doing that, it was 2 users and 5 users and launching little experiments and learning and continuing to launch. I'd say the biggest mistake, though, that I found myself making when I first got started, I was a freshman in college building various consumer social apps, and it took like months before we showed anyone what we were working on. And that was a mistake. I feel like startups are very akin to professional sports or the Olympics. Startups are like the business version of the Olympics, and someone does not become an Olympian overnight. And so I think it's just constant. Show users, learn, iterate, get feedback. Show users, learn, iterate, get feedback. And the more kind of swings you take, the closer you will be towards success. But I'd love for Anne-Marie to add.
I'm not sure if this. So, adding on, the one other piece that I think I would add is it takes a lot of homework about who you're going to be pitching to for funding. So, after you've done your homework on your consumer, after you've done your homework on your product, you think that you're ready for funding. That does not mean that you shoot out 1,000 blind emails to funders. You have to figure out who is funding something like yours and how to get there in a way that is will increase your chance that they will say, I'd like to learn more. They're never going to say, yeah, I want to invest. All you want is that hook to say, I'd like to learn more. Let's have a call. And from that call, you want another hook. I'd like to learn more. Let's have another call. And so it's a process. It's a lot of homework. It's a lot of digging. It's a lot of managing who you spoke to, and what you said to them, and what iteration you sent to them, and updating them as you go.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about some mistakes that inexperienced founders can make, but I think something interesting that we can shift into is what are the most valuable assets students or new grad founders may actually have that they often might overlook?
Youth, which means that that they can work long hours, and the older you get, the harder that is to do. And as you sort of said, naivete, which is a good thing. You don't want to be so naive that you're not open-eared and listening and learning, but you also want to be hopeful and believe that you have what you have, and everybody's going to want it. What would you say?
I totally agree. I kind of want to like double down on the work ethic and the hard work. I think, as someone that is just getting started, you're competing against big companies. Big companies have lots of meetings. They're very slow. And so that is why you see this sort of constant circle of, small company gets really big and then is disrupted by another small company. And so I would double down on that, like that you have the speed advantage, the work hard advantage, and that's huge. That's why these big companies sort of get disrupted.
And I would just add, I was surprised, when I looked at all of you who are in this room. It's a very, very impressive group of startups. I had expected more kind of consumer focused on your own demographic kind of startups. And so I think that's a huge advantage. There's a myth out there that, young people are the founders. This is what a founder looks like. So you have that advantage when you're talking to people about your startup. They're assuming, yes, there are negatives that you don't have, real world experience necessarily, but they're also assuming this is what a startup founder looks like. So once you get in the room, you have to be intelligent and know your stuff and convince them. But there's a lot of sort of social capital that you have, especially if you're going after your own demographic. If you're solving your own problem, you're solving it for your peers, you have that huge advantage of you are your market. And those, to me, are the best startups that I've seen, because I know there's a problem because I have it. And I've looked at all the solutions and I didn't see them. That's why I'm building this startup. So there's a lot of credibility there.
But make sure that you check your biases. So just because you have this problem, make sure that you are not under the assumption that everybody has the same problem as you in the same way. So be open-minded, ask open-ended questions, dig in, and understand all the others if they see the same problem in the same way and are looking for the same type of solution. So make sure you don't have those blinders on.
Excellent point.
Yeah, and so it seems like customer interviews and really understanding your market is pretty important. And so some of those key takeaways I've heard were that the fact that you're younger, you're able to scale faster and pivot more and really adjust to the demands of what people want from your startup or like what the market says. And so another question I have is, how can a lot of these founders leverage their networks at university and whatnot to really build those super teams and create high functioning products?
I think real quick on the kind of like leveraging your network in the university. I think everyone has this amazing thing today, which is you're a student somewhere, whether that's here or somewhere else. I think most people are here. Is anyone visiting? Raise your hand if you're visiting. Well, a couple people visiting. Being a student opens up so many doors, and the second that you sort of leave this institution or the institution that you're at, those doors are no longer open. So I remember when I was a student, I'd always sort of make it a point, like each week, am I reaching out to someone new to kind of leverage this email address that I have? That could be someone new that I learned from or someone new that I want to kind of experiment with and tinker, work on a project together. And so I would definitely ask yourself every week or every month, am I meeting someone new? Am I using this .edu email address appropriately?
And the special sauce at Princeton is the alumni network. Princeton alumni love Princeton. Once you graduate from Princeton, you become a Princetonian, and that's more than a student. Take advantage of that. They want to know what's going on campus. They want to know what you're working on. You feel like you're asking them to help you, but you're also giving them a view into what's going on. And that's with all schools, not just Princeton. So reach out to the alumni, reach out and say, hey, I see that you're an alum from my school. Could I take 15 minutes to talk to you about what I'm working on? Chances are that they'll say it's a warmer ask than just saying, hi, could I spend 15 minutes? So make that little connection.
15 minutes is like, don't say an hour.
No, 15
minutes.
15 minutes.
They don't book 15 minutes in their calendar, but 15 minutes is something they can say yes to, and maybe it stretches.
And typically when you have that 15-minute conversation, A, it may stretch to half an hour, but B, they may give you 5 other names you can speak with. So don't be afraid to ask. People are usually happy to pass you on like, oh, that's so interesting. This is not really my area of expertise, but you should talk to so-and-so, and they'll make that introduction. So don't be shy about asking. The other thing is, I didn't go to Princeton, but for my alma mater, when I get things, I'm like always happy to help. But I found on LinkedIn, I get reached out to by students everywhere, and I'll just never say no to a student. And it's not because I work at a university. It's because students are really, you're beginning your journey in life, and people generally want to help you. So I would say leverage your alumni network, most definitely, and leverage LinkedIn. So each of you, when you walk out of this room, you should look at all the names in the program. So my name, Anne-Marie, Corey, the judges, and send us a LinkedIn connection, because that builds your network of warm introductions. So I guess. And Corey, actually, I'd love to. How do you keep up with your network after you've built it? It sounds like you were a networker extraordinaire, one person a month.
Yeah, it's a good question. Keeping up with, I guess when I was in college, I did a couple of things, which was I sent this sort of like monthly update to the people that I wanted to sort of build a relationship with. That monthly update could include what I was working on, or if I wasn't working on anything, I would just include various sort of learnings. I think one thing that we spoke about earlier is that you have your youth as an advantage, and some of the older people in your network are just like curious, like what are young people doing? And so I would aggregate, information to an older audience from my friends, being like, these are the top apps that people are using on campus. These are the clothing brands that people are excited by. This is the artists that people like just information on where people's attention lies. And if you can sum that up, like that's super interesting to someone older, especially someone older that invests. And so I kind of sent this sort of monthly email, and I in return years go by, there's an awesome ZFL alum that actually introduced me to this, named Allie DeBow, and she sends this monthly email. She runs a company. She sends this monthly email to 100 or 200 people a month of like, here are the interesting people that I've met in the last month. Here are the interesting companies that I've seen in the last month. And it's just an amazing way to stay top of mind for people that you're trying to build a relationship with.
Yeah, and so it seems like keeping up to date with the people you reach out to is really important for building long-lasting relationships. But a sentiment I've seen around campus when people reach out to alumni is that A, they're not able to create longer lasting relationships, and B, they're not sure how to evaluate value out of the relationships. And so there's kind of a trade-off between how many people should they reach out to, how many people do they keep following up with. And so I was wondering if you guys have any tips on A, how to make a relationship more meaningful, and B, how to evaluate like who is most important to you and your network.
So if I think about the students that I've known through the 8-9 years I've been on campus, the ones that have stuck out to me are the ones that periodically, not weekly, not monthly, but periodically over the years have reached out to say, hey, I just wanted to update you on what's going on. Hope everything's, just sort of that top of mind, because otherwise you get lost in that I used to know. And reaching out with a little bit of an update, a little bit of an information share, that I think is by far the best way to stay top of mind. You don't have to do it weekly. You don't have to do, and once you graduate, still every now and then to your, what you call your sort of close advisors, your advisory board of people. So maybe it's 10 people, maybe it's 20 people. It depends on yourself, and you don't want to have too many that you can't keep in touch with. You don't want to have too few that you're not getting a broad enough input from people. And those are the people that you can then reach out to say, hey, I've got this decision I'm trying to make. And since I've known you now for 5 years, 6 years, and I've seen your quality, or I had one reach out saying, I'm applying for this fellowship, very prestigious fellowship. Would you recommend me for it? Because I've been watching them and listening over 4 or 5 years, sure, I'd be happy to. And I feel like it's a real recommendation, not a, tell me what to say recommendation.
And I would just build on it. There are going to be people who are higher quality than others, and so you want to focus your time on the people you found valuable. But you also don't know who's going to be valuable as your career changes and progresses. So one strategy, and I think what Corey did, I want to be on his mailing list. So it's really nice, and so I'm aware of him even if we've just met this once. But LinkedIn is actually, again, a nice way if you post thoughtful posts occasionally, and if you're connected to a lot of people, you're not kind of top of mind the way Anne-Marie talked about, but people are watching your career, even if you don't realize it. And it's not a lot of effort. I mean, you should be very thoughtful. You should post things that give the impression you want to give, but it's a great tool for staying in the minds of people who are more peripheral. And then maybe when you reach out to them, they're already going to know what you're doing and be happier to take a conversation with you.
And to add one little thing to it, I think at the very least, like these updates, whether it's on LinkedIn or an email, if they lead to nothing, they're accountability for you to be like, am I making progress in life? Like, am I making progress in what I want to make progress in? I've often found that I do this, I recently started to do this. I wasn't doing this before, but kind of questioning each week and each month and each year, like, am I making the right progress that I want to be making? And having these, monthly investor updates or monthly kind of network updates at the very least will allow you to reflect on the last month and did I kind of make the progress that I wanted to make, and give you a format to reflect.
Yeah, and so let's say progress is going well for a lot of our the student founders here, or like in our audience today. Something else that I think a lot of them might be wondering is if they're becoming more and more successful with their ventures, how can they balance that work-life balance between, their ventures and school? And conversely, like how can universities work to support this system?
Did I mention youth? uh, from my perspective, academics comes first. But, and I'm checking to see who's in the room. In the long run, get through, get your stamp. After your first job, maybe if you're going to a professional school, there's not many people that ask what your GPA was. So don't get too wound up in it. I think it's really easy at Princeton to get to really focus a lot on that, and there's a lot of pressure around that. So make sure that you're balancing it appropriately, but just appropriately. There's also the summers. So some people will focus on their startup in the summer. Some people will say, I want to learn more about the ecosystem and how to work in the ecosystem. So I'll get a job at a venture capitalist so that I can understand how a VC thinks about, or I'll get a job in a startup to learn how it is to work in a startup before I start building my own. So think of those also as pieces of your whole academic career puzzle.
And, I'm with Anne Marie. Sometimes it pains me when someone says, "Oh, I'm gonna drop out to do my startup," because again, I work for a university and I've seen the value. But follow your passion and keep your options open. It is one thing I would say. The other thing that I've noticed with a lot of student startups, and there are always exceptions to prove the rule, but a lot of people do work on it over the summer, and then you get to your junior paper, your senior thesis, and your friends are back and you have your sport. Enjoy the whole college experience. It's okay if you don't necessarily follow through with it. Treat it as a learning experience. But the people I've seen who've been really successful with their college startups have integrated it into their education. So we had, most of the examples I can think of were technical. I designed this robotic arm when I was in engineering major. We have one person who created a, it doesn't like it when I call it this, but it's essentially a hangover cure. And he was a religion major, and he wrote his senior thesis about the ethics and drinking. And he's a very successful founder. He was successful in college. He did take a year off though, didn't he? Yeah, he took a year off. He came back, and he very much integrated it into his studies. So if you can combine your two passions, what you're learning in school and what your startup is, that's a great recipe for success right out of the dorm room.
I agree with our fellow panelists here on their remarks. I work with a bunch of people that have dropped out of high school, dropped out of college, quit their fancy jobs, and I've worked with people that have that are in school, that have graduated, and so it's very context specific. I mean, back to the whole Olympic sport analogy. Most people don't go to the Olympics. Most people shouldn't drop out of school. Most people kind of play a sport as they do alongside school and work, and so your startup can be that sport. And I think if it's a question, then you should probably stay in school. You should probably integrate if it similar to an Olympian, they would not question should I go to the Olympics, and they're probably very prepared to do that. And so default, I'm a huge fan of college and of the institution, and think that you should take as much advantage as possible. I audit a bunch of classes for fun, usually sit in the back and see just everyone distracted on their computers or phones. And then when my friends graduate and they go back, they're like, damn, there are all these amazing courses, all these amazing teachers, and look at everyone just distracted on their computers. And so it's hard to kind of be in it, but maybe write yourself a letter of hey, I just graduated from school, and here's a letter to me in the future, and this is what I wish I got out of these 2 years left or 1 year left.
Yeah, and so I really liked your analogy with the Olympics, but a lot of the founders here aren't it's not easy to evaluate whether or not you have a high chance of success if you take a gap or if you drop out, right? And so I'm not saying, like, what are some indicators or some metrics that students can use to look within themselves and see whether or not that might be the right choice for them, or if they should stay and keep leveraging resources they have on university?
I'll share one kind of quick story from a Z fellow mentor. This company's called, everyone's I'm sure heard of it, DoorDash, and the founders of DoorDash, when they started this project at Stanford, the company was called something else. Does anyone know what the name of the company was before DoorDash? It was called PaloAltoDeliveries.com. And so it's just this little side project of like, hey, we want to get delivery from our favorite restaurants in Palo Alto. They bought the domain name PaloAltoDeliveries.com. There was not even a website. There was a phone number. The founders would go run out to the restaurants and then go make the deliveries themselves. And eventually, they started to get more orders. One day, it rained on campus. It's rare to rain. It's rare for it to rain in Palo Alto, and like orders flew through the roof, and they had hundreds of orders. The whole system went down. They apologized by delivering cookies to everyone the next day, and but it was this sort of constant, little kind of growth here and there, and early signs. But they had no idea that it was going to be, what it was today. And so I'm always a fan of like starting very small. Kind of incremental progress, similar to the whole sport thing. You're probably not going to be professional. I play a lot of tennis. You're probably not going to be a professional tennis player after 1 month of playing tennis. And so usually there's this time where you'll know, like it'll be this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I am inundated with customer support emails, or me being in, studying for school right now is stifling progress, and like look at the charts. And so it's this like feeling that you will know, and if you're questioning whether you have that feeling, it's probably not there yet.
Oh, I was just going to echo that. The traction, if school is getting in the way of your startup, then you have a startup worth thinking about taking time off of school for. But yeah, I would just, you said it so eloquently, I can't really add.
And making sure you're doing the homework and talking to people and talking to people and talking to people and talking to people and then talking to people to confirm that you have what you have. And when you start to hear the same things consistently coming back and you really understand the nuanced detail of it, then you are starting to understand your ecosystem. And that takes a lot of talking.
Go for a second.
Oh, I was just going to add one more thing. You do have to live somewhere, and you do have to eat. Mm-hmm. So typically, if you are at this point where you have traction in your PaloAltoDelivery.com, maybe there's already some funding because you have great traction, but maybe not. So be realistic about what your year not in school is going to be like and how it may affect your financial aid, and take care of the practical things, even though that's less exciting than the startup.
For sure. One quick thing to add to, I totally agree with like the calculated risk. Like it shouldn't just be risk for risk taking, but from the talking to people stuff, one mistake that I made, and I remember this freshman year of college, was, talking to people and then not looking at the data. And everyone's like very nice, and so I'm sure our judges here we'll see if how nice they are. But most people will just say, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's amazing, that's great, I love what you're doing." And I think I played this prank once where me and some friends, like at a startup event, made up some like cat acupuncture startup just to see how VCs would reply. And everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that's really cool, that's really great." And I was like, "What? Are they even listening to what our made up startup is?" And so. Well, people will say, so it's very kind of important to realize, like, yes, you want to talk to people, but really make sure that they are, they may give just nice feedback as opposed to honest feedback, but data, it's hard for data to do that. It's very, very hard for data to be nice to you.
Yeah, and so on that topic, that leads me to something else that I was thinking about. And so you guys were talking about how you should verify and start small and grow your business to something that actually has traction and has proof of concept. But another question I have is that a lot of the founders are visionaries or problem solvers, right? And so how can they maintain a North Star of like social impact or achieving whatever vision they're trying to work towards without really chasing returns or like getting boggled down by VCs or fundraising or other things like that?
Well, I think there's a lot of questions packed into that question. Um, uh, you can have a lot of social impact in a very profitable venture-backed company. You can also be a social impact company that is a nonprofit, and then there's a whole spectrum along the way. So if you are talking to a venture capitalist, generally they might be politely interested in your social impact, but what they really want to know is how you're going to make them a boatload of money so that they can bring it back to their fund to return it to their LPs. That is their business model. You have to show them that although you're going to do great things, you're also going to make a lot of money for them. That is their interest. That is their business. So you can't be too social impact focused with a venture capitalist. You can be very social impact focused with some angel investors or with some foundations. So there's sort of a spectrum of how you talk about your impact.
Definitely second what Anne-Marie said, but building on that sort of your North Star, being an entrepreneur is like one part vision and naivete and I want to deliver this impact. The other part is a lot of the day-to-day parts of it are really boring. You have to call people and email people. You have employees you work with, their problems are your problems because most people can't help bringing their problems to work. And so I think you always want to keep your North Star to keep yourself motivated and your company focused, but understand that your job is, as the founder and CEO, your job is very broad. So don't let go of the impact. That's the reason everyone's there. It's your job to get everyone excited, but it's like in college, you can spend a lot of time thinking about things you want to be thinking about and that you're excited about in North Star. In entrepreneurship, there are some very practical things. Like literally in my startup, I had to find real estate. I had to find furniture. I had to find benefits. And those are all really important things to having a company, but they're not the exciting parts, but they're really important parts too. So
Yeah, I would just say they're not mutually exclusive. They can be both.
On that note, what are some red flags that founders should look for when they're going to go fundraise? Some traps they might fall into?
Red flags on the fundraise. One, I think it's like really questioning, like, do you need capital and what do you need the capital for? I always recommend people like don't raise capital until they actually need it, and raise as little as you can, not as much as you can, as little as you can. What I've found is the controversial Kanye, or I forget who said it, maybe Jay-Z, Kanye West, like more money, more problems. That's who was it? I don't know if it was Kanye or Jay-Z, but one of those rappers said it, and I feel like it's true to startups as well. I've had friends that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and I've had friends that have raised less than $1 million that have made more progress than my friends that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Why is that? I think when you raise large amounts of capital, you start to play the startup game. You start to hey, I need an office. Hey, I need people. And the amazing thing is a lot can get done with very little limited resources. And then investors love it when they're like, oh my gosh, look how much got done with so few people and so little capital. What will happen if we give them more capital? And so I would say the biggest, fundraising, early mistake I see people make is probably not thinking thoroughly about here's the exact amount that I think I need. Here's the exact amount plus a little buffer of what I think I actually need to make, meaningful progress.
Right. It's very sexy to say I'm going out to raise VC money, but you're giving away a lot. So really think that through. You are selling your baby, and once you've sold your baby, you have very little say over what happens to that baby. So that's, if you are thinking through and you're saying that's okay, I'm okay with that, that's fine. But if you want to keep control over it for a while until you get to a closer stage to full commercialization, really think it through. Having somebody else tell you what you should do with your company is sort of painful. and you sometimes often don't agree. And they get to tell you what to do, even if they don't really know your market, it feels like. So it sounds sexy. It's it's not the path for most startups, honestly.
And just kind of building on that, I mean, VC is absolutely the right thing. If you need money to scale, you need to be first. You need to build a big, a manufacturing facility and things like that. But get to know your partners, because they are your partners, and they're going to be they're going to be there asking you questions, and they're going to be there supporting you. So if you have the luxury of choice, spend time and really get to know your partners. And it's better to say no to bad money than it is to say yes, even if it's the only money. And the other thing I would say about looking for VC is the farther you can get without outside money, the better, because then venture capitalists are looking to de-risk their investments. So the more you can de-risk it, the better. We already have our minimum viable product, and we have 100 people using it, and this is what we're seeing. Things like that.
So one additional point, we mentioned this sort of in the prep call, green money does not always equal green money. So if I'm a medical device startup, and I'm taking money from a group that's never done medical devices, are they really going to be able to support me through my regulatory process? Are they going to be able to connect me to the right people? Are they going to? So really think through, and whether that's a VC or an angel or whoever you're getting money from, think through what they can bring to you besides the cash. What connections can they make for you? What relationships can they build for you? Would they be a good advisor, a good partner? Can they help you find employees or a co-founder, or think of them as your other really valuable component to your company?
Yeah, one quick thing to add. I remember a student founder. It's so hard, this person wanted to give us capital. We had a bad feeling about the person, but we're like, it's capital, and no one wants to give us capital but this person. Well, actually, some other people wanted to give us capital too, but there was one person we were like, we don't know how we feel about this person, but he wants to give us $75,000, and so we let him give us $75,000, and that person was a huge pain throughout our entire history of our company. And I would highly recommend, exactly what was said kind of earlier, is sort of get to know some of the people before you take their capital. It's very similar to like a marriage, but a professional marriage, and it's very hard to get divorced in this particular professional marriage. And so you wouldn't necessarily get married to someone after one meeting. And so similarly, you probably shouldn't take capital after meeting someone for the very first time, and they probably won't give you that capital either. It's good to get to know them over a period of time where it should be a no-brainer that you want to work with this person, and vice versa.
So basically, don't get blindsided chasing high valuations. All right.
Definitely don't get blindsided chasing high valuations. And again, it's everywhere in the media. It's really sexy, but if your valuation's too high at the beginning, you're probably going to have a down round, which nobody likes. So a reasonable valuation is actually better than a high valuation out of the gate.
And to add to that, like when you hire an employee and they ask you what your valuation is, if you have no revenue and no product and you're like, it's $100 million valuation, they may be excited, like, oh my gosh, wow, but then realize, oh shoot, the stock that I was just given, how is that going to grow? And so it's very nice, that's another sort of reason to keep a reasonable valuation, because your employees that work with you, they want to see growth. They don't want to be like, in 5 years, this will finally reach our $100 million valuation, and then in 10 years, maybe it'll grow. So you want to keep your employees motivated. And one way to do that is just like, every year we went from a X $1 million valuation to a little bit higher, to a little bit higher, to a little bit higher. Like that gets people very motivated, and, teams ultimately build companies.
So you guys have shared a lot of wisdom today in the panel. I'm going to open up the panel to everyone in the audience if they have any questions for any of our lovely panelists.
Thank you so much, guys. I mean, echoing what you were saying about raising and chasing valuations for the LinkedIn post / news article, is there much scope for founders to negotiate with VCs in terms of buyback clauses for equity? Or is that really a trap where those metrics they need to hit are so impossible that the VC will maintain their equity for as long as they want to?
I mean, every VC is different. I'm a a generalist that invests in people and let kind of the jockey run the show. I'm more of a cheerleader as opposed to someone that rolls up their sleeve. If I was rolling up my sleeves, I would just go start the company. But I'm not in that business anymore. So I would say you're like I don't fully understand your question. But let me, like, is there an opportunity to buy your VCs out later on? Was that the question?
Yeah, of course. Where I've heard in certain VC contracts there's an option to, if you hit certain metrics within a period, you can buy back the equity the VC's taken, at least in the EU. Maybe not a thing in the US.
Yeah, not too familiar with that. But I would definitely kind of go into the relationship that, hey, we're going to be partners for the long term, and that's usually sort of the best. The best model that I've seen is you want to find people that will support you from day 0 to year 5, and not be like, oh, we're going to buy you out and replace you with this person. But I don't have too much experience, and sorry.
I haven't heard of that either. But yeah.
So I think you're asking whether the venture capital here would be receptive to the founders repurchasing equity, right? Yeah. So I would just advise you to think about the mentality of the risk bet that the VC is making, and understand that most VC investments fail. And so the VC is really relying on the outperforming assets to drag up their return. So if you cap the return by saying there's a buyback clause, it changes the entire dynamic of that investment within their portfolio.
Yeah. Okay. There are times when late stage investors will have redemption rights where they have the opportunity to get their money back with some modest return when the company is kind of going sideways most of the time. And that may be what you're referring to. I'm not sure. But I agree completely with the previous comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the panel. It was extremely insightful. So ideally, a team is central to the success of any startup. And when you're young as a company, there's not enough cash around. How do you incentivize early employees? And are there certain green flags that you look out for? Is it experience? Is it just the drive? Like, what do you look out for in the early employees?
How do you motivate early employees with limited resources? I mean, I think to some of our early, I think it's like the mission. I think it's if you look at Elon Musk, and he's paying people very little at SpaceX. They work their tails off 7 days a week. They're not doing it necessarily for the money. They're doing it because they really believe in what his mission is to bring people to space, and that's what gets people to kind of sacrifice and work. And so I was actually talking to a early SpaceX employee, and now he's an investor, and he was mentioning that like a bunch of these hard tech companies will come to him and say, hey, we recruited someone super experienced from this company, we recruited someone super experienced from that company. Looking at himself, thinking like, oh my gosh, if you looked at SpaceX in the early days, we had none of that. We just had a bunch of super hungry, driven, talented young people that worked their tails off to make it work. And so, to answer your question in one sentence or one word, it's like the mission. And you want to get people super excited about that more so than money.
And another thing that we really haven't talked about in team building is that you want to find team members that do not have the exact same skills as you. You want to make sure that whoever you're adding to your team is complementing what you have. So you are one of the founders, make sure that your co-founders don't come with the same skills and experience and sort of a replica of yourself. Interestingly, I thought that that starting a company with a family member or a very close long-term friend was a negative, but from what the data I've seen actually says that it is a positive because you have to work things out. It comes back to that marriage. You have to figure out how to work things out and get over it. Somebody's going to get hurt because the decision is not theirs. So you have to have a relationship that you can get past that. And maybe you should talk about the prenup that we talked about.
Yeah. But just building on what Anne-Marie said also, communications are key. Really being able to have difficult conversations is important. But yeah, when I look at startups, not just venture-backed startups, but companies and things like that, you really want to have a prenup while you're still in love, is the analogy I like to use. The Alumni Entrepreneurs Fund that I ran, most of the failures were partnership failures, often best friends who started a company together right out of college, and your life goes in a different direction. That's great that your life goes in a different direction. You met someone, they got a job somewhere else, you have to leave. Whatever the event is, make sure you have a really clear-cut agreement for how you will separate. And work with a lawyer on it. It doesn't have to be complicated. One thing that my husband and I have done in some deals, it's just a buy-sell agreement. Like, if you want to leave, that's great. You set a price, and I'll choose to buy it at that price or sell you my share at that price. I'm not recommending that format, but just a simple mechanism for a breakup so that you're not fighting about it and ruining the company for everyone. I think that's really important to do.
Thank you so much for the time this morning. You mentioned something very interesting about playing the startup game. And I think that's a huge problem, especially in a room of people that are so driven and young as we are. And so what are some of the things that you, with your wisdom and experience seeing young founders, you look out for people that are just, quote, playing the game and maybe have a little bit too much of that naivete about their valuation, things like that? How do we keep internal checks on ourselves to be realistic about where the startup's going?
Great question. It's really hard, and sometimes I'll find myself playing the VC game and showing up to. There was one event I showed up to the other month, and I was like, "Why am I here? Like, what? This is not where founders are. Like, this isn't where I'm going to meet interesting people starting companies. Like, there are just a bunch of other VCs in this room." And so I think the check, a good kind of check to make is these like weekly report cards. Write down what is important to you and your business, and mostly kind of probably focused on the customer, or focused on like releasing a new version of said product. And so I think these like weekly check-ins are so amazing because it forces you to reflect on, wait a second, did I showed up to 6 events. Shoot, I didn't talk to a single customer. I didn't, focus time coding my product to release it. And time goes like this. It really flies by. And there are, without a weekly check-in, it may be like 3 months for you to realize, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't be going to all these startup events. I should instead, do X, Y, and Z. So yeah, in one sentence, it's write down what's important to you, and then just really, really, really be disciplined every Sunday night or every Monday morning. Look at that.
Yeah, I was just kind of building on it. Have some people who are grounded as well that you talk to, who can say, you spoke on 10 panels, but what did you get done for your company? So just knowing you have some people who have your best interests at heart and want to see you working on the right things, just kind of a reality check there. And one of the hardest things to do is to say no when someone's really excited about what you're doing. So again, like one of the companies that I worked with in my program has this technology to do rapid room temperature drying of biologic materials, totally focused on the vaccine arena to get rid of the cold chain. Really great. Every single clean tech funder I talked to about another company I was working with wanted to talk to him because the rapid room temperature drying of biologic materials is huge in clean tech. But you have to succeed in one thing first before you can do anything else. So it's really learning to say no, and is this on mission? Because the people who are coming to you and wanting to talk to you or having you talk to them, they're excited about what you're doing, and that's really flattering and exciting in and of itself. So just focus.
All right, let's give it up for our panelists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our panel. Once again, we really appreciate everyone's insight. And thank you again, once again, to Ethan for moderating. He did a fantastic job. And yeah, so right now we're going to start the transition into the pitches. So we're going to do the setup right now. We have everyone's pitch pulled up who's going to be presenting in the first round. As a reminder, we want everyone to try to be sitting in the middle row. So all competitors who are here, if you could just slot into the middle few rows, that would be fantastic just because we're trying to keep these seats clear. Yeah, so MidAI will be the first team, so you guys can come up if so we can do setup. And like I said, everyone just try slotting into the middle few rows. Thank you.
And round one will officially start at 11:15. So we have about 8 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I figured here just in case. But. Oh,
Thank you guys so much for in terms of the rest of the competition. If you want to stay, we'd love to have you.
And also their mics.
I actually just recently saw one of the posters here. That's so neat. Wow.
I could use my location. Yeah. I like to go in.
Absolute skill. But yeah, he has slides.
30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I like it.
They're recording for this?
Yeah.
No, we just want.
You heard that? We finally got it. Oh, you mean the post, right? So
How did you pivot?
What did I know your chocolate coat?
Wait, so what did you do for
I got insider knowledge, so I know the special number of birds
The bar is so tall. It's just I love it when I see it's represented.
and that would just basically split success rate.
It's already started. There's
Right, so you're
yeah. Like all three has never been represented in a popular culture.
I know, that's
We have
amazing.
Drake and J. Cole like
And like
back to back.
together at the same time. Isn't that crazy?
I feel like Drake's coming along party and gonna bring out J. Cole as a guest to collab back again.
Yeah, because they're like on the same side.
Exactly. Which is like the epicenter of their rap.
No, and you know what it is that
It was a necessary.
Yeah.
so the other side.
Bro.
Once they get
Nice meeting you.
Metro, then make it great to see.
Thank you.
We get to go to Mokashi.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe the epicenter. Now you're forced to listen. You got that mind.
But during lunch, you like
Right, your position is
got
to be
it.
lost
Great.
in this.
Sorry, you're so good at this.
My presence is like that of a Christian.
You guys wanna move forward?
Okay.
I got you.
I'm not moderating the first one, right?
No, no.
Jack has it.
Jack has it. You guys wanna move forward?
I'm raising my
Yeah. Hi, would you come? Eliana. Nice to meet you. With TigerLaunch. Yeah, so thank you. You want to support him? How about you sit right here? Yeah. And, huh? You know what? It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. But I support your support tonight, and thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. How long ago did you?
5. I'll be
Out.
They said you can connect your own.
Dropped out of school. You basically dropped out of school.
Wait, I don't understand why. You're putting on, you know how to commit.
I'm a first year student. Yeah, so just starting to get my feet half the world.
I would also like a double entendre because could be I'm the one that yell.
That one at Yale.
Oh yeah, the way he said it, like dropped out of school. But like it could be
Oh,
either
really?
way.
What did you study? Economics and finance? Very nice. Did you do your first year? So you always like coming back? I got a few more years here.
Why don't we get pencil? We got, what do we get?
I think you've done a little like actually go crazy.
Drake fucking walks out.
Went to Tyler's speaker.
I'm gonna like lose my shit.
And we're known to have like a smaller camps than some others. And with when all the construction's done around here, it'll be even nicer. Yeah, right? I've heard there like hasn't been construction as this long.
I think it would be actually like really crazy if they do like the whole like candy.
We don't want to. We might. Yeah.
That's
They don't know what to do with it anymore.
Look at someone like mid is fun. Great.
Like it's cool.
Science, like, so
They call it
that's it. I guess down there, but
It's actually like not so
hopefully it's not very yeah.
with the date.
I hope you enjoy.
Want to introduce, and then I can just give.
If you want, you can have. It's like.
Out of the band.
Do the judges have how many mics do you have? You have this mic.
Are they relieved? So early. No, that's what I thought too. So I saw Crable smoking. This thing is coming out. No, he didn't. No, he I would like to play.
I think teaching is fun. Are you saying something? Speak.
It's kind of hot. Bro.
I'm not, bro. It's the same as the 27 page. I follow it. Stop.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with round one of pitches. So if everyone wants to take their seats, we'll get started in about 30 seconds. So. Great. So as I said, we're going to get started with round one. We have 6 fantastic teams ready to pitch before lunch. But once again, we also have our team of VCs here to judge them. And so introducing these VCs again, we have Stephen Chambers, a managing director at IndieBio. Thank you, Stephen. We have Alexandra Sukin, an investor at Bessemer Venture Partners. We have Mark Bailey, co-founder and CEO at B5 Capital. Also Alex Bailey, a co-founder and partner at B5 Capital. And then lastly, Trevor Barron, a managing partner at Cloud Tree Ventures. So let's give a round of applause to our judges.
As a reminder, the format stays the same as the regionals. It is 5 minutes of pitching, 4 minutes of Q&A. We have our lovely moderator, Jack. He will be the one with the timer. So he'll let you know when there's 2 minutes, 1 minute, and 30 seconds left. He'll also be the one to introduce and cut everyone off if you go over time. So we'll be calling up teams one by one. But Jack, if you want to introduce the first team, MidAI.
Awesome. So my name's Jack. I am a partnerships officer with TigerLaunch, and our first startup is MidAI. Uses AI and robotics to automate cell cultures in life sciences research labs, addressing issues of time-consuming, contamination, inconsistencies, and scalability. Welcome, MidAI.
Hey guys. So my name is Ben, and we are MidAI, trying to make cell culture easier than ever. So I'm currently a PhD student in biomedical engineering focused on cell therapy. This focus is driven by the loss of my grandma due to lung cancer, and I hope one day I can make cell therapy become the cure for cancer. But in the past few years of my research, I realized there's one challenge that keeps slowing my research down, is that we don't have enough cells for cell therapy. And this is an industry-wide problem for many research of life-saving therapies. The reason is that we are doing manual cell culture right now. So we have to do the incubation, liquid handling, imaging analysis, and a lot of fragmented tasks like liquid organization, waiting the liquid to warming up, and then a lot of cleaning steps. So with that being said, the problem is time consuming. Cell culture is very low scalability right now, and no standardizations. And contamination, always an issue. And there's just not enough people who can work on this task. So what we are doing right now is combining AI, using AI as the brain and robot as the body to kind of create a artificial cell culture technician to significantly reduce human labor into the process, as well as provide standardization, sterile environment, and also AI unbiased cell analysis and decision making. And the system is compact and user-friendly, while also compatible with T-flasks, which is commonly used for high-volume cell culture. So one unit can save a lab about 200K per year from manual cell culture. And with the combination of incubation, imaging analysis, and liquid handling in one single system, it truly achieves human-free automation. We estimate to have about over 21,000 of potential customers in the world, and we estimate the total addressable market to be around 131 billion, with service obtainable market to be around 13 billion. So we have three revenue streams. The first is to, of course, sell the hardware through either direct selling as well as a robot as service type of subscription model. We also have our AI software, which is based on subscription model. And then we do have our own consumables for sale as well. Based on our conversation with customers and competitors, we have found there are four main disadvantages with the existing technologies. First, they're too expensive. They cost between 1 to 3 million, which is unaffordable and unjustifiable for many customers. And then they are too big. Lab space is very precious. A lot of customers simply just don't have that enough space to put a big system in there. And then they're too hard to use, often requires a lot of training to operate these big machines. And then they're too dumb. So a lot of them are semi-automated, meaning that humans still need to be around to supervise the machine. So what we are building is that first, we want to make it a compact and affordable system with easy to operate system with assistant through AI. And our system is capable of high volume cell culture of multiple cell lines in full automation. So we target industry customers first, including pharma, biotech CROs, and we have received a letter of support and intents from many customers like Moderna, ATCC, Charles River, and AstraZeneca. And we are right now finishing the prototype. The IP is solely owned by us, and we are focusing on hardware development right now. The hardest part, which is the liquid handling, is done, and we also have a lot of work to do with software, of course. With that being said, we love to use the potential funding from this event to the development of prototype, which will prepare us for the pre-seed investment. We started our company in the late 2022, and after initial research, talking with almost 30 customers, we have found that we want to do this full time. So we incubated at Ascender, Nucleate, and now we are fundraising and prepare for our beta testing, which we have been invited to Moderna's Boston campus and preparing for commercialization in early 2025. So this is our team, co-founded by me and Xinyu. Xinyu is a robotic engineer from Carnegie Mellon University, very talented and experienced in AI and mechanical engineering. We also have two PhD students from University of Pennsylvania joined through the nuclear program to support the life science, robotic, and business development. And then we have mentors from both academia as well as the industry to help us to the successful commercialization of this technology. And so let's redefine cell culture. Let's redefine how life science research is done together. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Now we're going to open to the judges' Q&A. Here you are.
Thanks very much. It seems like a really compelling opportunity with cellular therapy is definitely the future. What do you see as the primary technical risks and in turn the barriers to competition down the road?
Yeah, so the technical risk right now is very minimal because a lot of the technology is relatively mature. But one thing that I would say a technical risk is coming from more of the AI side, because AI it do have is sometimes inconsistency. So we are trying to build our own data set and to train our or optimize the model as much as possible to kind of minimize that risk. And in terms of competition, of course, the AI plus the robotics combination for lab automation is relatively new. There's only one company doing it right now. So in terms of competition, there are companies trying to do it, but we are one of the first. So we're trying to catch this opportunity as fast as possible.
Yeah, that was great. So what cost level would you come in at? So what's your estimate of costs here?
Yeah, so after talking with manufacturer OEMs, we have estimated the total material cost as well as the manufacturer cost to be around 50 to 60K. So we are targeting at a price range about 300K to 400K.
And the consumable side of it?
And the consumables is comparable to the existing consumable product. So we're not adding actual financial burdens to customers. So we just want them to, because they have to buy pipettes, they have to buy the consumables anyway. So we're, and now we're doing it automatically. So we want to kind of help them to switch from the automatic supported consumables.
Okay, and you'd be going in like your first application would be cell splitting, you think? Like just splitting
cell
cells?
maintenance, cell splitting, media change, morphology analysis, things like that.
Okay, and what analysis would you be doing? Like what?
So we have, we can do cell confluency analysis, we can do morphology analysis, media color, and also cell growth trend.
Is that on someone else's tech? Is that like a
So
cell-
the imaging device is based on us, and the software development is, so we have a cell profiler model that's publicly available, but we are feeding it with our own data. So we optimize the model with our data set.
So it'd be something like Taipan Blue you'd be doing, like for the counts?
We're using our own software to do all the decision making and also the robotics operations. Also adding on to the previous question, I think this is a very exciting time for AI and robotics combined. And there's a lot of like robotics company trying to do like very general foundation models, but not really anyone doing models for like life science and biotech. And I think like having these data both from the cells and from operating the robotic system will be able to like train a better like lab technician.
Okay.
And a follow-up question. We completely agree that robotics and AI has fabulous opportunities in front of us. What budget would you be tapping into, and what's the payback period? Have you guys talked to enough people to have an idea of how compelling this will be from a financial standpoint for the organizations you're selling to?
Yeah, so I think the payback period is kind of comparable to manuals. So we're not competing, to be honest, with a lot of other big companies. They're selling 1 million, even 3 millions. We're actually competing with human labors. So we're trying to minimize human labor being devoted into cell culture. So that manual hours can be saved for customers. And that manual hours will be devoted to other experiments or more value generating activities. So we are selling about 300K to 400K per year. And that's the salary for two to potentially 3 technicians, and we are trying to aim for that return for customers.
Especially in the current economic environment, that is going to be really important to closing sales.
What are you trying to protect most specifically with your patents, and why do you need to use AI?
Yeah, so great question. So first of all, we are compatible with Flask. So why we are focusing on Flask this much is because not so many people are doing Flask operation. They are doing well placed, of course, but Flask requires a different manipulation. It requires the more of a hand manipulation. That's why only a human doing it right now. So that's one thing we're trying to protect the most is Flask operation. And then our patent is actually the combination of robot and AI, the concept, as well as our design of using AI and robot. So robot alone is not new. AI alone is not new, but combining AI and robot system, especially with our unique design, is our patent.
Awesome. That is the end of our 4-minute Q&A. Give us a moment to help us set up for Project X.
Also, can everyone in these rows move into these 3 rows, particularly the first 2? Thank you.
While they're getting set up, I will introduce Project X. Project X is redefining computing with Infinity OS, a cloud-based operating system that runs on the web and enables users to run the latest apps and games across all devices with any hardware. Project X aims to bridge the digital divide and democratize advanced technology for everyone. Please welcome in Project X.
Hello. May I start? So, hi everyone, my name is Ronak Adhikari and I'm the founder and CEO of ProjectX.Cloud. So I have a question for everyone. So how many of you face lagging while running heavy applications and games on your laptops? Okay, so most of you guys, nice. So this is a very severe problem in developing nations like India and the other countries in the southern part of the world. So to bridge this problem, we have created a solution, that can run the latest apps and games on any device you have. No matter what hardware you have, you should have some internet connection, and that's enough to run the latest applications and games on that. So let's get to the numbers. So in India, more than 75% of the college students don't have a computing device where they can run the latest apps and games over there. So, it's a hindrance in their education path. So, and more than 40% of the normal computer users face, system hangups and crashes every single day. So for that, we have built Infinity OS. So Infinity OS is a website. It's a web app that looks and feels like an operating system and runs on the cloud. So you can just log into Infinity OS and run your favorite apps and games over there. You don't need to install anything over there. You just need to make one click and use that. So how is it different from any other solution in the world, right? So there are virtual machine solutions available in the world right now that you could use to, compute on the cloud. But these virtual machines are generally very complex to set up and scale up and down. So what we are doing at Project X is that these applications independently are running as microservice on the cloud. So these are extremely resource efficient and cost effective. So, and you can run them on any device simultaneously. You can collaborate with your teammates and, work anywhere. So, as I said, it's very cost effective. So in Infinity OS, we have, compute credits. So one credit is equal to around 6 cents. So, and it gives you around 1 hour of Chrome computing or any lightweight computing. And for heavy GPU intensive tasks, it's around 20 cents an hour. So it's that cheap. So this is the comparison of Infinity OS compared to other solutions. You can see that on the most basic plan, it's only $180 for 5 years for 50 compute credits per month if you opt for that plan. You can just scale up and down anytime you want. And this is it moving forward. So there are, so coming to the competitive landscape, see, there are solutions out there on the market that provide infrastructure solutions like AWS, GCP. There are conventional operating systems like Windows. Chrome OS, being a lightweight OS, can't run heavy applications as it's running only web applications. There are conventional solutions like Citrix, Chasm, who have different target markets. And there is a solution like Never Install that makes people run virtual machines on one click, which is also a great solution, but not as flexible as Infinity OS. So this is the team. We are a student-led team. We built Infinity OS in a very small village of India, and it has come through the problems that we faced while growing up as a child in India. We faced this problem firsthand, and we have built this with rigorous hard work for 2 years. Yeah. And we are lucky that, senior stalwarts of the industry, like the senior director of HP India joined us full-time without salary. People from BCG joined us full-time. Like guys from NVIDIA's core team are working with us to build this. And I'm happy to announce that we have finally built the MVP of Infinity OS after working for 2 hard years. And I would love to show you the demo. Okay.
Pause the timer.
Fine, never mind. So talking about the traction, we didn't do any marketing, but we have received immense interest from all students across India to use Infinity OS because all of them are facing this issue. No matter in tier 1 universities or tier 3 universities, this problem coexists everywhere. And even from top tier institutes like IIT Bombay have shown interest to buy Infinity OS, and they're our first customers. So we are replacing the IT labs in the IDC department of IIT Bombay with Infinity OS totally by next month. So that's the initial traction. And we have been supported by many famous accelerators in India, and we got funded by the government of India. We got 200,000 infrastructure credits from Google Cloud as well, and we have built InfinityOS on top of that. So coming to the demo, see, this is how InfinityOS works and feels. So I can just make it full screen and it's a full-fledged OS, I can go to the settings, I can just minimize, I can run Chrome. So this Chrome might be a bit laggy because it's running on the Indian servers. I'll just show you something that's running on the US server. So this is how it works. I can just test it. See, it feels like a native operating system altogether. It's still usable, nice. Okay. So I'll just show you how Blender works on the web. Sorry, yeah. You can see it's extremely smooth. Extremely smooth. I can just do anything I want. I can play the latest games and all. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome. We're now going to open it to the Q&A. Got it?
What is your underlying cost structure, and what do you estimate at the current price point your gross margins will be?
The gross margins are around 30%. And that's the cost for the Indian service. It's like more or less the same as in the US also, so it's fine. And the costs are, and the main cost for us is the infrastructure only and the manpower. And so, as I told, that our engineering team is all student-led, so we have very less cost on the manpower side, and that's it. Like, there's not much costs other than the infrastructure side. That's the main expenditure, yeah.
You mentioned this pretty large market in India that
Yes.
has been your focus. What types of activities are your target market like engaging with?
Yes.
And what types of things can you support today versus not support today?
Okay, so at this point of time, we are supporting only applications that run on Linux, but we will bring support for Windows apps by the end of this year. You can run the games on Linux as well, so it's fine. So use cases are you can run Blender, you can run Android Studio, do even heavy browsing is a challenge in India. If you run more than 10, 12 tab, your fan starts running, the laptop is heated up. So there are many use cases across. And one use case for the B2B side is for the institutes. They spend millions of dollars every year to build their IT labs, but the students are anyways unhappy across any institute in India. So suppose you're in your 5th semester and you need 5 applications. The university will pay for only those 5 applications and you can use them. And as a student, you want to play some games, you can always pay for it and play it. So
it's
that's
mostly the student market that you're targeting?
the student market, yeah.
What's the minimum bandwidth required to be able to use the system?
10, 12 Mbps works fine. And after the widespread proliferation of 5G connectivity in India, it's very easy to use InfinityOS over there.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up with that. With infrastructure, it seems that use cases are so important. Identifying the use cases you're going to really optimize the experience for, and the budgets. Like, who has the money to pay, and why will they pay? So as you think about and kind of related to that as B2B and B2C, they can be very different. Sometimes companies are fortunate to have both, which is awesome, but they can pull you in different directions at different points. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about use cases,
exactly,
budgets, and B2C versus B2B.
Sure, sir. So at this point of time, we have very limited working capital, and we have built this with literally no resources. So B2B education sector is our current focus, as we don't need marketing, and these institutes will pay us well, as they have a very big pain point with this. So in any college across India, they're facing this. So even IIT Bombay gave the order without even testing it. They were so frustrated with the problem, So this is the main target market. Will sell InfinityOS to the universities across India, and since the students will be the consumers, they'll also get the add-on services, and it will spread across that way. Hope that answered your question, sir. Yeah, sure.
Do you have a sense for why no one has tried to do this before? Is there some breakthrough on the infrastructure side, on the cost side, that has enabled this to be possible? Like, how do you think about it?
So there has been many companies who have tried to solve this. So there was one company called Mighty from California. I think Suhail was the founder. They were trying to make browsers fast, but it's not justified to pay $10 for using Chrome. Never. So right now, what we are doing is that with the very latest technology, we are using multi-instance GPUs, which are extremely cost-effective to run these applications on the cloud. So we are working with core team members of NVIDIA to, we just executed, like the blender that I showed you was just made a week ago. So we're implementing that inside Infinity OS, and this is how we are more cost effective. All these images, the Docker files are being made from scratch by our team. So that's why it took us so long to make this. And we are also filing for a process patent in India. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. That concludes our Q&A session.
Thanks, man. Good pitch.
While they're getting set up, I will introduce Fovo. Fovo is getting pharmaceuticals to consumers and patients at 90% below market price. Please welcome Fovo.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Akbar, and I'm here to get you to join us on our mission of getting medicine to the people at the lowest price possible. I've got a bit of a revelation for you. Pharmaceuticals in the US are extremely expensive. Not only that, but since COVID, there's been an average cost increase of 15.2% per year. This is even more stark when you consider 28% of the US population forego some form of medical treatment simply because it's too expensive. And 13% of individuals know someone who has died simply because they can't afford the medicines they need to keep them alive. On the other end of the supply chain, there is intensive amounts of waste. $17.1 billion worth of medicines are left in the supply chain to expire every single year. The primary reason for this is biased forecasting, but due to the bullwhip effect and other issues with the supply chain, pharmaceuticals are left there to expire. Fovo is the company that has come to the US to change that. So we're able to source pharmaceuticals at 90% below the market price. We do this through working with pharmaceutical companies, including distributors, manufacturers, clinical trial organizations, to catch stock that has 12 months or less on the label. If you're a pharma company, you get stock at 6 months left on the label and you incinerate it. The reason for this is that none of your upstream customers will buy this, whatever the discount, as they don't have the pathways or can't take the risk of keeping the stock in inventory to get it to the patient. To give you an example of the savings we can achieve, we're going to use everyone's favorite drug, Ozempic. If you're procuring through AmerisourceBergen, the main procurement tool in the US, you're paying at least $980. Fovo can get you a 46% discount through procuring Ozempic from a clinical trial organization, with the caveat being it has 8 months left on the label. The message I'm trying to share is that we can source any pharmaceutical at up to 90% below the market price from companies in the supply chain. So, to research this thesis, we launched an eBay for pharmaceuticals in the UK and EU. This was a platform for pharmaceutical companies to log on and trade stock between themselves, with the caveat being it was near to expiry stock. We quickly scaled to $15 million worth of listings, and we are currently working with 51 companies, including some of the biggest manufacturers in the world and distributors in the UK. So, the maths geniuses in the crowd will recognize a big difference in the last two numbers. We've only processed around $1 million worth of drugs, and we have 15 million listed. We've decided to go direct to consumer to build pathways that allow minimal time to patient while sharing these discounts with patients directly. This will be an online pharmacy that can dispense prescription and over-the-counter drugs directly to patients at dramatic discounts. Now, the biggest question is, this seems like a relatively simple solution. Why hasn't Pfizer, Novartis, Novo Nordisk invested a bill into a company that can do this already? We finally have the software that allows us to map the supply chain correctly. Old school pharmaceutical manufacturing forecasting models are rife with bias because they don't include live patient data and are affected by production cycles and delays. We have built an AI that currently forecasts precise pharmaceutical demand at 95% accuracy, and we're going to iterate towards 100% through integrating live patient data when we launch. This means we can understand demand for any specific drugs at a given time in a given region. So, my background, I did a brief stint in VC. When I returned home, I opened my fridge and found $6,000 worth of insulin that had expired. At the same time, my friends in the US were paying increasing amounts per month on pharmaceuticals to stay alive. My co-founder has about 15 years of commercial experience in pharmaceuticals, including in the US, and our CTO has over 20 years of experience in AI and used to work as a paramedic, so really does ideate with pharmaceutical expiry. So as I've got a minute left, I'll be super quick. Compared to 30 seconds, competitors in the US have, of course, tried to lower the cost of pharmaceuticals through a variety of methods. As much as we can protect our advantage through exclusive contracts with pharmaceutical companies, we can also integrate with these companies to reduce the amount of stock they have on their shelf that expires each year. We plan to scale through going to uninsured patients and all the way to becoming a national pharmacy. And today, I'm not here to present to you a cool AI solution applied to the pharmaceutical supply chain, but rather the first step we make to democratizing pharmaceutical access in the USA. Thank you.
Now we're going to do Q&A. First question. Here you go.
Relatively easy, straightforward question. What are the gross margins that you expect in this business?
It would vary drug to drug. As I've mentioned, it is about 19%, but depending on the product and how demanded it is between 15 to 40% dispensing it to a patient.
How do you think about the logistics piece? This relates to the gross margin question, but I imagine that these drugs are held in different centers all over the country. You're trying to match demand. You also have to ship them. Some of them might be need to be shipped in a certain way, cold, et cetera. And so how do you think about the logistics of matching the consumer to the person who has a drug and shipping it to them in a way that's effective and also results in positive gross margins for the business?
Thank you. The AI solves that or addresses that issue. Because we have the B2B platform and the analysis of the drugs we'll need, we can find the cheapest drug not only in its absolute cost, but also the cost to ship it to the necessary warehouse for pharma at the time. So as much as there is a significant logistical cost, we can pass that cost onto the patient and still achieve them intense savings versus going to CVS or another pharmacy.
And then a follow-up question, how do you think about like the regulatory response or the response from drug companies? Because I imagine as a consumer, if I know that I could get something that's 8 months close to its expiry date, I'm not going to buy it off the shelf at CVS, and that'll have an impact on the price that I as a drug manufacturer can charge. And so how do you think about their response and the regulatory response to what you're doing?
So pharma companies first, because that is quite positive. You are right where it is almost a Louis Vuitton burning bag situation, but a lot of companies have had this issue for decades of having inventory on the shelf that they can do nothing with. So it does make sense for them to build not a competing market, but a secondary market to distribute these drugs. As at Pharmover, we understand that certain patients have misconceptions or would rather get their pharmaceuticals that are long dated from CVS. So that has been addressed at the moment with pharma companies, as they understand this is the only route they can kind of get their revenue back. In terms of regulators, the WHO guidance is you can't dispense pharmaceuticals for 3 months or less. Our software means that most of our pharmaceuticals are between 4 to 6 months. So that means that we are within WHO guidance and still giving patients enough useful time to use the drugs without expiry date crossing.
One follow-up question, market segmentation. Do you have some thoughts on where you might focus your efforts? And it seems like these are going to be long-term medications, and so there's also the importance of being able to continue to supply these customers or clients.
Absolutely, where in pharmaceuticals, patients with chronic conditions are your returning customers all the time. But for us to get our mission and build our golden user group, we're starting with uninsured patients in the US first. Individuals who don't have health insurance due to being self-employed or simply prefer to pay upfront with cash for their stock, for their medicine. After that, and we've scaled enough, we're going to look to integrate with insurance providers. And finally, we're going to build towards becoming a national pharmacy. There is scope towards becoming a PBM, but in reality, the PBM market is extremely aggressive, so we can make more of a difference by becoming a pharmacy and collaborating with companies directly and some PBMs. In terms of state by state, we haven't decided exactly where we're looking to launch yet, but it will certainly be on the East Coast.
Awesome. That'll be all for the questions. Give us some time to set up the next pitch deck. Thank you so much. Our next startup is Trinity Tube. Trinity Tube is an innovative, minimally invasive, multifunctional neonatal feeding tube that integrates feeding, venting, and non-invasive vital sign monitoring into one device. Please welcome Trinity Tube.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is Iman, co-founder of Trinity Tube. Every year, 360,000 babies are born premature and 15 million globally. Almost all of these babies go into the neonatal intensive care unit where they receive more than 20 devices, tubes, and wires attached to their body. These devices are really invasive on the baby's skin, and it's also really making really hard for the mom to put their baby on their chest and provide breastfeeding and basically comfort with the babies. This is actually a standard part of practice, so the babies have to spend some time on their mom's chest. And as you can see, this is really making hard for the nursing team to organize all of those wires, making sure there is nothing detached and everything is in place so the alarm doesn't go off. A skin-mounted ECG and vital sign monitoring cause a skin breakdown, irritation, and infection. They may not also stick very well to the baby's skin because babies have vernix and liquid on their body or high humidity. So there is an unmet need for minimally invasive vital sign monitoring without using adhesives or abrasives. Respiratory monitoring is not really effective nowadays because the physician cannot tell how much pressure is going into the baby's lungs versus what they set at the ventilator. And the current solutions are really invasive on the baby's face, put a lot of pressure on it because we shouldn't let any gas leak out to avoid any pressure drop. Some of that gas that's supposed to go into their lungs leads into their stomach and causes the stomach distension called CPAP belly. So we have to extend that gas out. So there is an unmet need for direct pressure feedback from inside the body and improve venting of the stomach. We know that all babies are receiving this $10 piece of plastic as feeding tube to get fed because they can't swallow themselves. And we believe that this is a wasted opportunity. So can we make a better use of this feeding tube? Trinity Tube is our solution, a minimally invasive, multifunctional vital sign monitoring device that not only allows us to feed the baby, we can also measure the vital signs internally, all in one device, and also help with venting the gas out of their stomach. So we can measure ECG, pressure, and temperature all from one device. So without Trinity Tubes, babies look like this with the bulky CPAP on their face and all the adhesives. And with Trinity Tube, we can transition into more comfortable nasal cannula and no wires. We know that the market for disposable vital sign sensors is about $3 billion globally and $1.2 billion in the US. With about 300,000 babies admitted every year, with an average of 28 days and $300 unit cost, we estimate about $360 million of SOM in NICU level 3 and 4, with early adopters being academic and research centers. Trinity Tube is the only device that provides all of these functionalities in one device without any invasive adhesives and patches. We submitted our patent. We built 2 fully functional prototypes and tested on our animal model, and we published our paper. We also did more than 200 customer interviews and the stakeholder interviews to understand the priorities and the market landscape and the regulatory landscape better. We optimized our design based on that, and we hired professional secondary market researchers. We did a deep dive into how the market and fundraising look like, and also our regulatory planning, which we did with a firm. So we are currently doing our phase 1 clinical study, and we are getting ready for the phase 2. Then we're going to meet with FDA and work on our application. So after that, the design lock, do all of our testing, and submit our 510K application in the next 12 months. We are going to raise funding, immediate funding, to support our clinical study phase 1 and 2, and also the regulatory consultant fee and all the paperwork for pre-submitting. We have a great team of clinicians and engineers and regulatory advisors that helped us to bring this project into a product that we could help all of these patients. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I can answer your questions.
First question over here.
So this is the standard of care right now.
Okay. So how long would it be in place in the infant?
For a PVC tube, it's going to be 7 days.
No contamination, no worries about
No.
blockage or anything?
No. Why not? This is how it's intended for. I mean, if it's silicone, you can go to 30 days without replacement. They don't flush it. They provide milk and nutrients through that tube. So this is currently what the babies are getting. But we're going to be comparable to that. That's why I'm saying 7 days is going to be our device.
Okay. And the actual placement of the tube, like it through the mouth, through the nose?
It could be orogastric or nasogastric, going into baby's stomach, esophagus, and the stomach, and we get vital signs from their esophagus, feed them in their stomach.
Okay. And the regulatory pathway, what's your best guess for what type of device would it be given? What classification?
This is going to be class 2 510K. We're going to have 2 submissions. The first submission is going to have only pressure monitoring added, with the temperature and feeding already as the primary predicate. And our secondary 510K will include the ECG leads to de-risk the 510K, not getting into a de novo pathway.
Okay, and the animal model you were using? What animal was it?
It was a 700-gram rat, but that was just a proof of concept data. Physiology is different. Actual patients are on CPAP or nasal cannula, so that's why we got IRB approved to do 2 MVPs, and I have MVPs here just in case you want to see.
Okay, super. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
So what's the cost saving to the customer, right, using your product rather than the various products they're using? And then what's kind of the margin profile of the business? Do you see? How would that look?
Sure. As hospital perspective, there is a cost saving directly for the number of devices they use. This is just probably half of what a baby gets, costing about $100 of consumables. The reason we have it at $300 because we are replacing a lot of the current CPAPs, which is really puts a lot of cost on the hospital. And also the indirect saving for the hospital is the nursing to patient ratio. Currently, nurses spend about 2.64 help put 2.64 patients at a time, so almost between 2 or 3 patients. But if we can decrease the burnout and turnover for the hospital, because there is a lot of burnout for the nursing team, spending too much time on the baby, that would be the hospital saving. I can get into the like insurance if you want to know.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
How have you funded the project so far, and how much funding do you think you need to take you through the next stage of regulatory?
Right. So far, everything we raised was through grants and awards, non-dilutive. About $150,000 in the last 18 months. Our cost for the next 12 months is about $110,000. About half of that goes to manufacturing and consulting. But to get the 510K submitted, our estimate is about $300,000. And as you know, most of it is biocompatibility, sterilization. So, and continue on your question, our market assessment from Back Bay, they told us like how we should approach towards raising money to get that done with both grant money as well as angel investors. So
Has anyone on the team gone completely through the 510K process?
No, we haven't. We are
with any other project or any other.
Yes. Our team. One of the co-founders is actually a co-founder of another product. He's been through all the 510K. So our team is experienced to do 510K, and we are getting support from the regulatory consultant to get that done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. That wraps up our Q&A session. Can we have a round of applause? Awesome. Just give us a moment to set up our second to last pitch deck. So our second to last pitch is ToxySense. It uses genetic engineering to develop a more sustainable and cost-effective bacterial contamination test for screening medical products and diagnosing sepsis. ToxySense, everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Arvind and this is ToxySense. We're using genetic engineering to build more sustainable and cost-effective tests for bacterial toxins. Every single person on this planet who uses medical products, which I'm sure is both you and I, relies on this one animal, the horseshoe crab. But why is this? Horseshoe crab blood is used to test for endotoxins, which are the sickness-causing molecules from bacteria. When they get in the body, they can cause severe effects, including fever, septic shock, and death. In fact, they're one of the leading causes of death in hospitals worldwide. Because of this, all medical products that touches the bloodstream are required to be tested for endotoxins to ensure the safety of users. This includes everything from vaccines to surgical tools and much more. Now, the current endotoxin test has two major issues. It's extremely expensive and it's very unsustainable. Every year, over 100 million samples are tested for endotoxin contamination using this horseshoe crab blood-based method. And to do so, over 500,000 horseshoe crabs are harvested from the ocean and bled each year. Each gallon of this horseshoe crab blood costs $60,000, and it's causing immense ecosystemic damage as well. ToxySense developed a more sustainable and cost-effective solution by genetically engineering this plant to luminesce or glow at different brightnesses based on the concentration of endotoxin in the sample applied to it. It's just 5% of the cost of the status quo and comes without any environmental damage. And it works in just 3 simple steps. We grow or engineer plants, make a solution of their cells, and send this to the user. The user simply adds their sample to this tube and measures the luminescence on a lab standard machine called a plate reader, which allows them to quantify how much endotoxin was in the sample they added to it. And ToxySense brings 3 main advantages over the status quo. We're over 20 times cheaper than the industry standard, over 25 times more accurate, and equally as important, we're preventing the overharvesting of horseshoe crabs and the associated ecosystemic damage, which is especially important in this time of climate change and other threats. Most recently, we further advanced our system by engineering the human or the mammalian immune system into our plant-based biosensors. The gold standard immune sensing system for these molecules come from humans like ourselves, and by engineering this mammalian immune response into our plants, we're maintaining the low cost and scalability of our plant-based biosensors while capturing immense sensitivity and specificity with the human immune system, thereby creating one of the first transgenic plant immune sensors for bacterial toxins. And this is enabled by a robust R&D pipeline, with 9 key goals centered on specificity, sensitivity, and increasing ease of use for users. And with our technology, we foresee seeing a huge impact in our two key market areas, which are testing for biopharmaceutical products, as well as sepsis diagnostics, which I will get into. And we believe that this can be done because of our strong backing from customers we've talked with, from small-scale biotech startups to large-scale companies like the CFO of Moderna to current manufacturers of the endotoxin test, who have all indicated the need and demand for a more sustainable, cost-effective, and more effective endotoxin assay. Now, moving into our second market of clinical sepsis testing. Right now, bacterial infections in patient bloodstreams are diagnosed in a very tedious process. Blood samples are taken from the patient, and bacteria are cultured over multiple days to see if anything grows. Over that time, physicians have no idea what is causing their infection and have to prescribe very broad-spectrum antibiotics that lead to other issues like lack of efficacy and resistance. With ToxySense, we can provide an earlier initial result in less than 2 hours, thereby immensely improving patient outcomes because each hour saved decreases mortality by 8%. And this is really important because of sepsis' global impact, with over 47 million cases annually and causing nearly 1 in every 5 deaths worldwide. And because each sepsis case costs about $5,000 on average to treat, it's important that we decrease costs as well. Looking forward into the future, this summer, we're conducting pilot studies to evaluate the efficacy of our test with biomedical manufacturing and R&D partners in the US, as well as clinical settings both in the US and abroad, which we're excited about to validate further as well. We've already obtained provisional patents on the technology, and are filing non-provisionals as well currently. Using the pilot testing data this summer, we'll apply for USP approval and later move into market adoption after that. And we believe we're the right people to get this done because of our strong backgrounds in biotechnology and entrepreneurship, with both me and my co-founder Uda as well. We've also recently hired a postdoctoral researcher at Penn, Dr. Prakash, who has over 15 years of experience in plant biotechnology and is leading our R&D efforts as well. We also have a team of rock stars behind us, including plant biology and biochemistry experts, as well as startup and clinical leaders who are partnering with us to conduct this pilot testing. And this is where TigerLaunch's support comes in. We hope to use your support both for R&D, the patenting and regulatory process, as well as scaling for pilot testing. We believe that this will significantly increase our R&D process speed, achieve our IP targets as well, and of course, infinitely boost our excitement, which we're really excited about as well. At the end of the day, our grand vision is simple. We want every drug, every medical device, and every patient with potential infection to be tested using ToxySense. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
We're going to open up our Q&A. You got a question?
That was great. Thanks. Like, why would I change my assay, like for this? Like, what would be the underlying reason?
Yeah.
For the change, for it to go from a gold standard.
Of course, that's a really good question. So one reason, there's a few reasons. One reason is the cost. So right now, the horseshoe crab blood-based test is quite expensive to manufacture, but due to materials cost and the process required. And because we're using a plant-based biosensor, which is quite easy to produce and quite easy to scale, that's one reason that we can decrease costs for users. Secondly, the performance of the assay as well. One big limitation with the horseshoe crab-based test is that it's not been found to be equally as effective with endotoxins from different species of bacteria. And that's something we've made sure to engineer in our system, also by using the mammalian receptor for endotoxins, which have equal efficacy across different bacterial species. And obviously sustainability. So it's not only a social impact drive. Pharmaceutical companies have specific sustainability goals that they want to meet, which we've validated with companies like Moderna, for example, and this would help them to meet those goals. So those are a few reasons why.
Is there a sensitivity component?
There is, yes. So there's two aspects of that, right? Sensitivity and accuracy, or the variation. So in terms of sensitivity, now by engineering the mammalian immune response into our plant-based biosensors, we're also able to achieve not only an equal efficacy to the horseshoe crab blood-based test, but actually better efficacy, since the mammalian TLR4 receptors are known to be have a much stronger binding affinity than the horseshoe crab receptors. And there's also this variability aspect, having a much lower variation and being much more specific in our readings as well. Yeah.
So this is great. I was going to ask a question about the, can this basic approach be addressed, can it address other types of, with kind of the bio approach, can you address other types of tests that are being done today, and what would be the associated market opportunities with those tests?
Exactly. So you got a really great point. And we envision this being a platform in which we can engineer the system to connect a whole variety of diagnostic testing. Engineering, for example, mammalian endotoxin receptors into our plant-based biosensors is just the first of many applications we see. For example, another application that is easily extendable from this is detecting, for example, gram-positive bacteria, which have a molecule called lipoteichoic acid on their cell membrane. Or, for example, detecting viral antigens or detecting yeast infections. Because of the scalability and modularity with which we've designed the system, we can easily swap out receptors for one molecule and swap in receptors for another. And so it's easy to develop diagnostics for a whole range of different indications. For example, you could detect viral infections, different types of bacterial infections, fungal infections in patients, and thereby scale the system across different indications, as you mentioned.
That sounds pretty exciting. And why did you choose to start here with all those possibilities?
Yeah, one reason is because of the immense impact of endotoxins from gram-negative bacteria specifically. So the majority of severe sepsis cases are caused by endotoxins from gram-negative bacteria, which include things like Salmonella, Shigella, E. coli, pathogens you can think of. And these molecules cause millions of deaths annually, which are all very expensive to treat. And so we believe we can generate a lot of market adoption as well as social impact by focusing on this molecule first and then expanding to others.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you were to, you reference this as a platform, what is required from a plant engineering perspective, if anything, in order to switch out the sensors?
Yeah. So previously our system was a lot more complicated. We'd rely on the entire immune response of the plant. So the molecule would bind to the receptor and there would be eventually a cascade leading to induction of genes in the nucleus. Now we've developed a system where the readout is directly from the binding of the molecule to the protein receptor itself, and that leads to a direct luminescence response. And so therefore it's very easy to modularly design the system. Essentially you swap out the receptor for another receptor, and there's a luminescent system that results directly from the binding of the molecule to the receptor. So it's quite easy. Essentially, you'd remove the part of the genome of the plant, the transgenic plants that encode for the receptor, and then swap in the DNA code for the new receptor, and then express that in new plants and grow those plants. So it's quite easy.
Do you have the freedom to operate packages for the plant engineering part?
So we do. Yeah. So and so to get to your point, the way we design the system is in that modular way. So there's specific segments of our engineered plant genomes that code for each receptor. And so when we're creating new transgenic plants for new indications, as you mentioned, we can just swap in that new receptor into the genome.
That's going to be our last question. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so our last startup before a little break is SteadySpoon. SteadySpoon empowers the millions of people suffering from debilitating hand tremors to regain agency, autonomy, and dignity with their self-stabilizing assistive device and software tracking.
Standing between you guys and lunch. I'll try to make it quick. Okay. Ready? Perfect. My name is Raleigh Dewan. This is Mason Moreland. We're the founders of SteadySpoon. And before I begin, I have a confession to make. I'm a mama's boy. Or more accurately, I'm a grandma's boy. This is my Grand June. And she made the most extravagant feast that brought my entire family together until she developed Parkinson's. And then she began to experience these debilitating hand tremors that were so severe she couldn't cook, she couldn't feed herself, and she was even too embarrassed to eat with us, her own family. So naturally, I wanted to be a good grandson and find a solution. So I began researching. What I found shocked me. My Grand June was just one of over 17 million people in the US that have these debilitating hand tremors, and I saw these terrible effects like a lack of dignity firsthand. So I thought, how could I be the best grandson of the year? What if I could make a device that could bring my grandma back to the dining table with dignity? And that's what we've done with the SteadySpoon. In the first human trials, we achieved 95% efficacy of the leading motorized device while being entirely mechanical and less than half the price. So how does it work? We are the only device that can stabilize in all 3 degrees of freedom. So pitch, roll, and yaw. Now you see John, our beta tester, has all these different dots on him. Those are actually part of a human motion capture lab that was able to take his movements and transfer it into quantitative data so we can see what is his actual hand tremor and then how steady is the spoon. And that's how we're able to get that 95% efficacy number. So in terms of the efficacy, we have the best price to efficacy ratio on the market, beating out the motorized competitors and even other mechanical competitors. And when it comes to the attachment heads, we're taking a little bit of a price cut to be able to make it more affordable and gain more market share once we launch. So how do we make money? We have a razor and blade revenue model. We have the actual device and then different biodegradable replacement attachment heads. So a spoon, a fork, a knife, a toothbrush, a pen. You're thinking about it, we're making them. So right now we have a very obvious direct-to-consumer model, but we're also been building out a B2B model, working with large care facilities in Texas, who right now are loving the idea of having cost savings on the labor of having care assistants having to feed patients by hand. And now with our device, they can feed themselves. So how big is this market potential? With an average LTV of $450 from the actual device purchase and the attachment head purchases, capturing just 10% of the Parkinson's and ET markets, our first two target demographics, you can see we have an opportunity here to do well by doing well and empowering these people to take life back into their hands. So how are we getting steady spoons into unsteady hands? Grandma is not on TikTok, unfortunately. We have partnered with the Parkinson's Foundation, the largest Parkinson's NGO in the world, getting key access and authority with our target demographic. So we're going after the foundations and the clinicians in phase 1, then expanding to those care facilities in phase 2, and then eventually larger health plans and big publications like AARP in phase 3. So we were talking to hundreds of clinicians and patients and building out Steady Spoon. And in doing this, we discovered a current gap in the standard of care. Specifically, there's no quantitative measurement of hand tremors and other key things like sleep, nutrition, exercise, and medication. So we built the Steady Spoon app called June after my grandmother to be able to use any modern smartphone to track all of these different inputs. And we did this first just to help our providers, but we also realized this could be a fantastic revenue potential for them and us. With existing RPM and RTM reimbursement codes, we get roughly $480 per year per patient. Capturing just 5% of the Parkinson's and ET market, you can see this allows us to have tremendous revenue potential. So how are we launching this? In year 1, we're focused on Parkinson's in the Southeast US, launching the hardware first. Then in year 2, expanding to all of Parkinson's across the US and launching the software. In year 3, expanding to ET, a demographic of roughly 10 million in the US, before expanding to other secondary diseases. Now, the most important thing I want to mention about the team is that every single person has a family member that's been impacted by debilitating hand tremors. That is our motivation. And we know as college students, it's not always how, but who. So we developed an amazing advisory board with decades of experience in intellectual property, digital health, and medical distribution with an SVP at McKesson. Now, judges, you have heard a lot today. You've heard about the tremendous pain point being experienced by millions of Americans who can't even feed themselves. A very simple thing you probably didn't have to think about this morning and having a bagel or eating breakfast. But you've also seen the hope in Steady Spoon. And it's our hope that you will join us on our mission to empower these millions to take life back into their hands. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is our final Q&A session. Do we have any questions? Awesome.
You mentioned like a 95% or some metric of efficacy. What does that translate into qualitatively? What's the real benchmark? How do you know if this is passing whatever threshold it needs to pass?
Great question. So right now, the best efficacy on the market is by Liftware, who Google acquired, and they are a motorized competitor. So they have roughly 90% efficacy right now, where they can stabilize up to 90% of a person's hand tremor. So our 95% efficacy is we achieved a 95.
Sorry, I just want to understand the metric. Does that mean 10% of the time or 10% of the sessions or?
For sure. Yeah. So really what we're talking about is the motion of the hand compared to the motion of the utensil. So we're trying to dampen that motion. So we can dampen up to about 85% of the total motion of that hand to the utensil. So you're going to be spilling less food. You're going to actually be able to eat it because even though your hand is moving, the spoon itself is not moving.
Okay.
So what's the IP position here?
So we've already filed a patent, a utility patent on the mechanism specifically to stabilize for assistive devices. And that includes all of our cutlery line and other things like pens, toothbrushes, and other attachments. And we're now looking at filing a patent specifically on the app of using the different gyroscopes and accelerometers and using those different things to track and measure all these different symptoms. My father is an IP attorney, so that came in very handy, thankfully.
Are there any broader applications?
for the technology. So we've been looking into other applications of how can we use this to study different things. We've been talking to some people in the military about a mechanical solution, has lots of benefits in terms of it doesn't need to be charged, lots of manufacturing solutions there too. And we've even been approached by some different bridge companies because there's a lot of harmonic damping in bridges to try to stabilize all these different movements.
Is there? I don't know much about the disease and the treatment infrastructure that's around it. Is there a lot of physiotherapy or other kinds of like non-hard medical interventions that happen that could be partnerships?
Totally. So that's actually, when we were building out the app, almost every Parkinson's patients, traumatic stroke patients, TBI patients are seeing a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. And they're seeing those usually every other week, if not every week, whereas they'll see a neurologist every few months. So by actually working with these PTs and OTs, they're the ones who would really be the primary reference channels because they are really adamant about helping their patients conquer their comfortable activities and those ADLs. So that's where we saw a big potential to kind of have reference channels. And it was in working with all these PTs and OTs, as they said, we're not really quantitatively tracking anything right now. It would be wonderful if we could track these different things. And by being able with these RPM codes to get them an additional $700 of revenue per year per patient, that's a big margin booster for them. They've been very excited. And we have a trial pilot right now with Blair Scott and White in Texas.
Yeah, and that's a great question too. When we talk about the app, there's a ton of placebo effect when it comes to tremor medication. So if you change medication, there tends to be a lead time on you think your tremor is getting better. You're like, oh, I'm not tremoring as much. It's doing great. And then there tends to be a steep drop off after about 2 to 3 months of usage. And so to be able to track those tremors, we can actually provide data potential to pharmaceutical partners. And so to be able to test efficacy of tremors using measurement every single day versus once every week or once every 3 months, that's a huge value add for potential pharmaceutical partners in the future.
Great, thanks.
Okay, any last round questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you guys so much. I would like to re-invite our co-directors Sophia and Richard back up to give an exit.
Thank you to all of our fantastic first round teams. I'm sure we all really enjoyed their pitches. So now it is lunchtime. Full disclosure, we are a little bit ahead of schedule. So lunch will be here so soon. But until it is here, we can have a networking session. You can either stay in here or head into the room where lunch will be served, which is the same place where coffee and bagels were served. But we will eat very soon. So get excited for that. But thank you to all of our round one pitches.
Thank you to Jack for moderating round one as well. Round of applause for everyone. Like Sophia said, just feel free to walk about. Lunch should be here soon. In the schedule, it says starts at 12:45. We'll hopefully have it here a bit earlier, but thank you.
Okay.